Nice. Okay, cool. Right. Sorry about the false start there, but we're here. We're live with another episode of Immortal Minds, and Wednesday's analysis is upon us. And as you guys can tell, we have a production quality upgrade. We've got ourselves some green screens, which is going to be a lot of fun to play around with in the future, especially on these. So let us know if you like it and if there's any suggestions you have for it. But other than that, I think it's time to get into the Asian Counter Strike. A lot of hype has been placed on these two teams, Vision Strikers from South Korea as well as Jupiter from Japan. And we're going to look at one of the perhaps best games that people have reportedly been talking about from this region. And there's a lot of really interesting stuff. So without further ado, Mike, I think we should just get to it, unless you think there's anything else worth mentioning at the top of the show.
Nope, we got the audio working, so that's one part of it. But so for this pissed around, one of the things we should probably note first is like what we're gonna be looking at a lot in these VODs, especially because like while these Asian teams are good at some things, they aren't necessarily like a top like 15 team or anything like that because they have lots of faults in their other parts of their game. But one of the things we're going to be looking at a lot is like these really aggressive defensive setups that Vision Strikers are going to be doing at the start of the round. And if you're a fan of like Sideshow or Sliggy, like I am, they both covered this VOD, and you'll see a play that they both covered. But if you haven't, we'll try to break it down for you. And then the other thing we wanted to note was like just the general like utility usage by both of these Asian teams and like what they do on retakes and how coordinated they are with their utility usage. So I think those are like two good things to note.
Yeah, I was genuinely quite impressed, and it's something that's interesting because right now there's this huge question mark above how regions will play against one another. And some people like to say, "Oh, this team is the best team in the world," which is a faulty statement because we don't have any data of these teams playing each other. And something that we understand from tactical FPS is there's a huge degree of impact when it comes to just the meta. So a team can look really good playing against other teams within that meta, but if you start to cross styles, from region to region, things could look very, very different very quickly, and certain things that you're doing might get shut down very easily, and you may be taking those things for granted as you approach teams which have answers for things that teams in your region did not. So obviously I think that's something to bear in mind, but that's not to say that we shouldn't be very excited about what we're about to see in terms of, as Mike was talking about, some of the utility usage and the ideas. And I think even, I mean, yeah, let's just get into it. I mean, I think the pistol round is a fairly standard slow A split. And it seems like a lot of focus is placed on holding on to U-Haul from Vision Strikers, which I think makes a lot of sense in the pistol.
Yeah, I agree, especially because I think they're just playing with the shorty in there. So what Vision Strikers are going to be doing first here, so I have the main map enlarged, so I'll play it through, but you can look right away, and their Sova is lining up a recon that will land from B outside showers. So instead of it going through the teleporter and them knowing exactly where he's at, he can shoot it all the way over across the map, and then they might assume he's A. And if they've been doing a VOD review and maybe he like switches up the sights, that's a good way to like not give a super indicative read into where their Sova's playing. So we can start playing it through. And from round one, you'll see that their Brim is focused on getting this orb mostly every round. So he's smoking that off, grabbing an orb, denying long B info. Their Sova reconned outside showers, and then the Breach and Jet are just playing like this U-Haul control setup like you were talking about.
And one thing, once you see this rotation coming in from uh, Jupiter, that I think is interesting, and we'll talk about more depth, is that role of Brimstone and how that impacts the overall options in seeing this consistent B-long smokes, because it's quite different to what we see from people running Brim in Europe and North America. But here we'll see that attack coming through, and Brim has rotated onto the A site in a timely fashion.
And then
And again, I think a lot of it comes down to this U-Haul control, which, there's a fault line to kind of go towards the back, and then the dash as well along that fault line to kind of backstab into U-Haul. But there's the Stacks is really good from this U-Haul positions in this game.
yeah, and Jupiter, when they were coming in, they paranoid into U-Haul, and then their Breach flashed through the APC as well, so they had like a really good like entry double flash for anyone that's playing behind APC, and then I'm pretty sure it's Vision Strikers breach counter fault line, so that was a really good fault line for their jet coming up short first.
And I think so. Something that's really interesting from the game plan perspective. So Mike already mentioned two really huge pieces that we're going to see in terms of Vision Strikers defense, and this is an interesting game because when I was watching this second half, we wanted to obviously typically we like to focus on the attacking side to see what the team that takes the initiative can do. But it's Valorant, so both teams have the ability to take the initiative. And so if we pause really quickly, I just want to make this point. Um, as Sova has the ability to throw the showers arrow at the beginning of the round, we're going to see that this will happen in quite a few different rounds. But he can throw that arrow from the B side. That doesn't really necessarily tell the attackers really all that much. And as Mike said, you can mess with the timing of that, and it's kind of difficult to deal with because you don't know if it's coming with aggression or not. Equally, we get the brim smoke that consistently goes down to be long, which denies the information. And lots of teams, especially in North America and in Europe, like to really pressure that be long control as part of the default to get that initial control on the map. It's one of the more easy places to systematically control because it's just a long corridor with one choke point. So it's like one of the easiest options for a low risk take of map control. But with having that brim smoke there and then having brim rotating on some rounds, it allows them to deny the information and have the ability to have brim help A in certain spots, or it allows them to actually make an aggression towards B. What it also does is it encourages the attacking side to focus more on showers defaults, which plays into the fact that that Sova arrow is going to come through. And because they have heavy B long control or have the option to have heavy B long control, it gives Vision Strikers more offensive options to basically completely screw up the default of their opponents by conditioning their options. So I felt like this is an interesting point to mention because we're going to see them making plays around this framework in this game. There we go. That's my piece.
I think as well, like obviously I have less insight because I haven't watched too many of these Asian tournaments, but it definitely seems like on Vine that they prefer these like A splits because I know on Vision Strikers attacking half is kind of similar, and then Jupiter obviously on this half as we go further in, we'll see a lot of like that A short with like maybe two people shower setups.
Yeah,
So
that's I think this is just like as a standard anti-eco type of situation, right? So
yeah, and they get a lot of info early, so they're gonna be doing like they're just peeking belong, they recon smoke behind it, he gets the orb again, and then Cypher used his cam outside hookah to get info there as well. So they had double info outside B. They had the recon at long and the cam outside hookah. So now they have the setup ready. I don't really think Brim should have rotated because they're playing a really passive setup on A. You can say Breach is in the back corner they're spotting. And then Jet, we'll see it in a later round. She plays on top of the APC like contact, waiting for a breach flash.
yeah, I think one of the reasons why they would have rotated A is because they may anticipate that their opponents are going to assume that they won't have enough utility or options to deal with Cypher utility and the Brim Smoke at long. And because that Brim Smoke, you can kind of hold behind it with favorable duels as the defenders. So if it was more of a stack towards B, maybe they're assuming that we're representing so much strength there and they're not going to have enough to deal with that, that it's more likely that they should actually wrote just like send it A. Maybe that was their thinking. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I agree with you. I feel like just playing the retake is going to be much more consistent.
Yeah, I think retaking B against pistols as well is like a lot harder because people can play in the container and like back sight, and that's really like hard to deal with. And then this round is the play that you've probably seen a few times. If you haven't seen Sideshow's channel, you should definitely check him out because he's been covering a lot of like the regions that aren't covered as much, like Latin America and Asia, obviously. So this round's really cool. So they use their jet a lot in these setups along with a flash to get control. So I'll just like walk through what they're going to do first and then we can see it just so you can see the things to look for. So Jet's going to dash to the right side of short from this view of the mini map. Then Brim's going to be smoking deep showers and left side short to smoke the breach off. So the smoke comes in a little bit late, but it's fine because you have the effects as it's coming down, and the breach isn't just going to like swing out if they're smoking him off, because that obviously is a sign that they're trying to push you. And then Vision Striker's breach is just going to be flashing through this wall and this wall. So then anyone that's on this right side is getting flashed, and anyone holding back is also getting flashed. And they've done their work on this because they time it so perfectly that the Jet never gets blinded during any of this. And then Sova also recons through the showers TP. So then anyone back here is getting spotted by the recon, which then with all this stuff going on forces the attackers to either try to fall back, which isn't very likely, or they have to try to push this Brim through a shower smoke. So we'll just play it through here now that we kind of have a basis, because there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen in like 5 seconds here.
Yeah, this round blew my mind when I saw this. Just the timing of the breach flashes are just amazing. And that you can see the pressure as well for Reina, like not exactly sure what she should be dealing with. Should she be trying to survive against the Jet? Can she go shower? Like a lot of confusion because of how quickly this happens. Absolutely fantastic opening. It just, I mean, especially again, this is a round where they have mostly Spectres because they won the previous couple rounds and they're against opponents who have more firepower than them. This is the correct round to do a play like this, where it's like a hyper aggressive setup.
I had to play it again because I just love watching this so much. And even though the Brim dies, they do a good job at collapsing on him. Because like I said earlier, their options are either to like push him through that smoke. It would also be interesting to see if you could have a recon that could land a little bit shorter. Because then if they're getting spotted, he could also spam them through the smoke. But I
Mhm.
haven't tried that out, but it might be a possibility. But I really like that play. And then obviously after that, they know they control like all of short, they control all of showers. So then Jupiter are basically stuck in the going B, and you can see on the minimap, I'll enlarge it quick, they have a double trap setup in hookah, and then they're playing a double long setup, which I really like, because obviously, like you said before, they're on those specters. That long fight when you're in garden with short range guns is actually like really effective, so they can just crossfire that and then have their teammates rotate through spawn. They all come through hookah because they have all the trips in there, and then they shut down the one long guy, and then know the other two are coming because of the trips.
Yeah, this is just it's such a fantastic round. This is very well thought out in so many regards. Having the ability to have the drone there as well and just attack, it just the amount of like all of the kills here felt like it was won completely by abilities and teamwork and synergizing, which is like this is such a great round of just pure Valorant gameplay in the sense that the gunplay obviously is always going to be important, but everything was enabled by the abilities and synergizing the agents and the team play. So it was beautiful, really beautiful rounds to watch, and it's the kind of creativity that we haven't really seen. I feel like I haven't seen something like that in the European or North American Valorant I've watched so far. So that made me immediately excited when I started watching this. And
Yeah.
there's this, I mean, moving into the next round, it's just going to be an anti-eco. So it's nothing too interesting. I'm not sure if you felt like this round was particularly interesting.
The one thing I noted was that like their Sova just swings long like right away, and he just posts up on this the entire time. And then this is the spot I was talking about for Vision Striker's Jet, where they just play like contact on top of the APC. And then I don't actually get to see what they do with it, but I'm assuming their breach would like flash through either the bottom of the APC or the wall in front of them, because obviously they wouldn't get blind, and then they could swing on anyone for it. But yeah, other than that, they just play like super standard backside. They don't get caught out. They just play together. They don't try to fight U-Haul against pistols or shorties.
Yeah, very simple stuff. One thing I did notice is that they were very good with the recoil control and their understanding of the lineups for spraying showers. That's actually something that doesn't feel as I haven't seen as consistently, but they seem very on top of the wall banks. Actually, the knowledge element around that seems very strong with these two teams. And
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I saw, like, there's about 3 or 4 kills I think Vision Strikers get just through that showers wall.
Yeah, they know what they're doing. It's cool to see that level of knowledge. It's just sometimes you'll have players that will rely on overly rely on their mechanics as opposed to thinking about what is every single possible edge I can get in the game, and knowing the spots, the timings to be able to do stuff like that is really awesome. That we've seen that these players have been working on. Um, Going into the next round, this was an awesome round. We had that little shot of the commentators, which denied us some of the view of the setup time, the freeze time. But what happened was we saw an aggro. Is this like the earliest possible point inside the game? Actually, um,
I might have missed a second. Okay, here we go. This is the earliest point.
okay, right, okay. So you can see that there is this aggression down long B, and and so with that aggression, Cypher's also pushing short B, and they've smoked off the market peak, the market choke point into short B. So this allows them to have control of because they've also smoked short A as well. So this allows them to not necessarily fear an immediate push on short A, and they've also stifled early timings on market through to short B. And with combined with the long B push, this allows them to create an offensive cipher cam setup, which I think was awesome. And I don't think that I've seen this before. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen this before. Have you seen this before, Mike?
Uh,
On this map?
yeah, not on this map. I was gonna say the closest would be like the stuff that Dep does on like Haven and other maps.
Mhm. Right. So like I've seen it on I think almost all of the other maps except maybe Ascent so far. But yeah, this was awesome to see. So that's what the early round opening looks like from Vision Strikers. Now the question is like, how do you play off of that deep cam? Normally, it's is that you have that deep cam and you rely on it to be able to stack the other side of the map. And but so the question is, what do they want to do with that B long aggression? And I guess we can play it and just and have a gander.
Yeah, so basically Vision Strikers just eliminates any of that B-side map control like you said. The cam's there. The Jet can hear that though. That's the only thing with that cam is you get a lots of aggressive info, but obviously they can hear it as well. And then Jupiter were already like going double shower so they can just go out. They really like to do or get their jet like over the APC. I've seen a lot. They'll like dash and updraft over the APC and try to split into U-Haul right away. And then like the retake starts happening pretty quickly. These retakes when they're on A is like so hectic. There's just so much stuff going on right now. Because they have the
Yeah, I honestly
Brimwall,
couldn't follow it.
Breachel, yeah. I played it through like 5 times to try like look at everything that happened, and there's like 4 ults used, I think, maybe 3, and then it just comes down to this 2v1 where he's just playing with him the entire time. But I feel like with Jupiter's, like when they try to get their jet over the APC, it would be nice sometimes if they had like another 1 or 2 people going through U-Haul, because obviously the person, if they're playing in U by themselves, has to worry about both sides at that point. They have to worry about, okay, their jet is like consistently coming up over the APC into U-Haul, and then if they have like another person just running up short, I feel like that would be pretty strong. I think they do it in one of the later rounds as well, but
Yes, it's cool too because because they have those two player showers, it allows the jet to not fear the only spots that the jet will get wrecked from is people playing backside. So that's the only thing that's a possible issue. Otherwise, everything's covered, and I think they just use their smokes and flashes effectively to deny the possibility that jet will get exploited in that sense. So it is a nice like standard, and as you said, like we do see that quite often from Jupiter. So that's quite an interesting one. And right into the next round we go. As you can see, it's the full buy round double operators. Is I guess one thing of note.
Yeah, so what they're also going to do at the start with both these ops is I'll leave the main map in large. So their Sova and their Jet's going to get both long and bathrooms control immediately. So theirs gain extremity control like 15 seconds to around. So their Sova is going to drone out, get more info, push people off this angle. Their Jet's already posted up in showers. And now they control both of these angles and they control both the extremities, and then they're just smoking off short because that's the only thing they really have to worry about right now, right? Because they have the Rip and Hookah as well. And then I think their jet gets pushed off the position here because they Jupiter's breach towards short. He's gonna do a fault line all the way in the showers to get this jet off the angle, which is really smart because they're so aware that he's holding this angle, and then they call for their breach to fault line it.
Yeah, I thought that, that was really beautiful the way that they did that because they also haven't seen Jet operating from that position or really anybody at this point, but still they had the detail to or the awareness to like approach the angle that way as opposed to taking the risks.
Yeah, and I think this round as well, the Jupiter's jet didn't get over the wall for APC either, so that kind of messed up their split because they got stuck on the corner because I think they got counter flashed or something, and then they just TP because they're not really sure about the information on the last guy, get out sight. Then this was insane. I saw when he had this
Yeah,
shock dart when I was watching on Sluggy Stream. I'm like, he definitely gets a kill with that shock dart.
yeah, that's pretty insane. Zest is an animal.
But yeah, I
This
thought
is
this was like a
good.
really good like initial map control coming out of Vision Strikers, and then the awareness from Jupiter to be like, okay, we can push this guy off this angle, and then we'll just go all out while he's falling off to try to reset to another good opping angle for himself, because he didn't even get a chance to like reposition towards U-Haul or Heaven. He was just like stuck backside.
Yeah, it's really well played. And it's interesting because you know obviously the stuff on the bomb site just it comes down to just like there's just so much madness. It just comes down to some gunplay fundamentals at a certain point, and they were left in that 2v1. But I was really impressed by so much of the detail from both teams. So back to the anti-eco situation, and it's pretty unfortunate for Jupiter to be losing so many of the retake scenarios because you can see they've been getting the bomb down in multiple rounds.
Yeah, I would also say like from the details side that you just mentioned, pay attention in this round especially, I think, on how often they're pinging stuff, like from both sides. You can see on the
Yeah.
main map. So at the start here, their Brim just smokes deep showers, acting like they're getting showers control. Jupiter just walked through it so they get that info that they're actually bluffing. And you can see like their Jets pinging like right side short. There's a guy here. They're pinging showers, and then there's a whole bunch more pings coming in. They're pinging that someone could have walked up in front of short for the breach when the jet rotated off that angle into Heaven. And then the Jupiter like pinging, okay, there can be a guy in this cubby. So it's just like 10 pings like every second on where
Yeah.
someone could be, which I haven't seen like many other teams abuse that much.
Yeah, I was gonna highlight the same thing. I was really confused at first because I'm like, what are they pinging? Because there's just so many pings, as you say. Like, there's not another team that I've watched that uses pings even maybe 10% as much, except just to like line up stuff through smokes, generally speaking, or camera like point out cams and stuff like that, or server roles. That's like basically it.
Yeah, and then obviously there's going against pistols besides the jet ult, but they cleared that pretty fast. But it's pretty unreal like how every time they go up short, the person in U-Haul like stacks there is just so worried initially about their jet going over the APC behind them because they do it just so consistently. Which you might honestly be able, like, you could fake that and just go through U-Haul normally with a flash and probably catch him out while he's looking backwards.
And you know, we again one of the reasons why I said it's a shame too that there's so many successful retakes is just because I wanted to see more. from both of these teams, and this is actually the last round. And so what happens here is one thing I mentioned before is that one of the options that Vision Strikers get with the way that they're playing their defense, with Brim especially, as he's doing this like be long smoke a lot in quite a few of these rounds, is sometimes you can get aggressive behind that smoke. And given the fact that they have Sova, the ability to have that Sova intel that can go behind a smoke is really powerful. And this is we're finally going to see that in this round, and it's going to end up being pretty effective. Like they seem to have a lot of setups that do catch their opponent off guard, which is a massive advantage.
Yeah, so they're just gonna smoke off B long, and then like you said, they're gonna change it up a bit. They have Sova and Cypher here, so they can get a lot of info. They recon, and then the Cypher's close enough so they know that he's in this corner, and he's pinging it already. And then they just drone through, tag him, and then they can just swing on this since he's distracted, and he doesn't think anyone's gonna be that close. But it's just like such good util usage to ensure you get that kill, and then Jupiter are basically forced into just going fast A again because they're denied all that B map control. And then I think they do like a really good job here to contain them like into the site. Oh, this was the really good retake utility round from them, I remember. Yeah, so they molly Cubby and then they shocked our bench like simultaneously at the same time. And now they just have so many less angles to worry about clearing. Now they know those two angles are clear. They had short and shower smoked off. So now they just have to worry about this last guy being in one of those choke points after they clear U-Haul. And it's all said and done.
Yeah, one thing as well to note at the beginning of the rounds when they push the player along, I think you mentioned this, but I want to re-emphasize it. They knew that there was a player in the corner, and they could very well have tried to like swing that player, but they used the drone to secure the kill. So that's a pretty big deal. There's a lot of teams that wouldn't want to use the utility there. They would try to cut that corner. But obviously in Valorant, getting a kill is pretty enormous depending on which agent it is. And they're just going to guarantee it for the cost of the drone, which I really enjoyed that they did that because there was almost this ego element um, with regards to how you play tag FPS where players will just want to be able to do it with the guns as opposed to like making it as easy as possible for themselves. So I really like that and cognizance from them there. I also found it interesting that Vision Strikers, as well as Jupiter, were often quite aggressive with their ciphers. Like their ciphers were often quite, the one of the players going in first from various choke points when they were pushing. I don't know if you noticed this as well, Mike, because I thought that was particularly strange. But in a certain sense, it's interesting because usually on the attack for Jupiter, for example, they would have a Cypher and Reyna usually taking showers control, and they would send Cypher out first, which makes sense because if you're with Reyna, you want to enable the power of Reyna to start ramping up by having or guaranteeing a kill on Reyna, which is emphasizing that as opposed to thinking about later in the round where Cypher becomes better in a post plant, which is kind of useless if you can't get site control in the first place. So I like some of the understanding that Cypher is just like a trade, like on the attack, especially in these aggressive setups, he is just the bait, which is kind of an interesting take because you don't see that as often in European and North American Cypher play.
Yeah, I think it just depends as well because one thing that we are talking about earlier is like an area where these teams seem to have like a lot of holes in their game. And I would say Jupiter's post plants on that half were exceedingly poor. So maybe that might be part of it as well as like they aren't very good at post plants, so they don't care about what utility they have there. So they'd rather have their Reyna be the one that's like trading out the cipher, like you said, rather than having the cipher alive for whatever post plant.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. Wow, we finished that one in record time.
I
So
I have it.
I didn't catch the first half of. Did you catch any additional rounds you wanted to mention?
I watched through it a bit. We can just like watch through a few of these rounds and see if there's anything that we find that's interesting. Because I know Vision Strikers does have some cool attacking setups as well. I'm trying to remember what round they do, especially for They do some stuff with their jet dashing from short. I just can't remember what round it is, but we can probably look at it.
Yeah. It's interesting that a lot of people are sort of projecting and predicting what they think the global Valorant scene will look like in terms of which regions will produce the best, almost dominant teams. And there's a lot of people who are maybe from the I would say like Overwatch world and the um yeah, I suppose the Overwatch world who are really convinced that the Asian region will be extremely dominant going into the future. And it's interesting because obviously with a CS background, because CS was not nearly as popular or mainstream in Asia, we have so much more of a precedent that the European and North American teams will likely be the best. I'm really curious how that's all going to shake out because it's very, very difficult to say ultimately like there's going to be a different meta in each region, so it's going to be really interesting. And I have at this point no idea, but I would assume that the North American and European teams would just be better through the experience that they have an advantage with the veteran players from CS.
I think the one thing the Asian teams are going to consistently do well is like their utility usage, because even in this round, there's something I haven't seen a team do before. So you can see their breach is left side short, and he's lining up a fault line. So this fault line from this angle that he's going would cover front of hookah, and it should reach like out to long here. So you can just like fault line this entire line and deny a hookah and a long peak at the same time at the very start of the round. And I like it's just
Ooh,
something like that I've never seen anyone do.
that's actually really awesome. Yeah, that's actually super awesome. That's a lot of pressure as well that you wouldn't. The thing is that you can see where the fault line comes from because of the direction. But it is interesting because you kind of have to respect it as well as like part of a default at the beginning of the round. The way that that denies timings aggressively for the defenders for information is pretty powerful because even if you can see where it's coming from, if a breach does that at the beginning of every single round, I don't really know what your response should be to that.
Yeah, I don't
Because they could be
know.
doing anything. They could be using it to actually go towards B because they get that timing advantage on you, or they could be using it to prevent you from getting information towards B, and then they can be hitting A because you don't have information that they're going A because you don't have info on B. So it's an amazing fault.
Yeah, and I don't think there's like a really good way to counter it, which is why I'm glad a lot of teams are starting to work on these opening fault lines a lot more. We've seen the ones that are like from short to showers on this map pretty consistently, but it's like if you're using an ability like that, you should be trying to get as most like the most value out of it as you can, since you get it back after 45 seconds for those regenerative abilities. And then this post plan is kind of weird because they obviously took U-Haul control and they smoked off the entire back of the site. They had showers controlled the entire time, except they all got funneled into U on the retake. So then the Sova has to come around from showers flank.
That's just pretty nasty, isn't it?
But yeah, it's like such a powerful position. You have like three people there. It doesn't seem very good sometimes, especially if you just got collapsed on that Sova isn't there. I think that's one of the most beneficial parts of why this worked for them, but I don't think without that Sova flanking you win that round with those spots.
Yeah, and the dynamic on a pistol is very different to the rifle rounds. Pretty easy on a gun round to shut down that amount of players in one spot, but the pistol rounds have different rules to them.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see. I can't remember if it was the second or the third round that they do a bunch of jet dashing stuff. It might be the third round. See what they do here at the start. But yeah, here's another fault line setup that they do. Yeah, this isn't the right, but we can just watch it real quick. Kind of interested to see what they do on anti-ecos, because I know from Asian Counter-Strike, their anti-ecos weren't very good either, especially on like the attacking side.
Right, right.
But yeah, it doesn't look like a whole lot. They just gamble stack showers, hoping they would maybe like challenge them through their smoke. Yeah, it's pretty much send. We can skip to next round. I think
Yeah.
I want to say it was the third round. Because the one thing with like these jet dash setups that they do with the flash, it's because so if you think about the jet dash when you're not using Jez and op, you can actually like we talk about all the time where you're making that first person reposition their crosshair to a really wide angle. So even if they do kill you, there's no chance they get two because then they have to reposition back to the first angle. But if you add a flash into that, then when you dash across, then they can't even reposition to you. They're just so lost on what they should actually be looking at because they're blind. And then that gives you a chance to get that kill without any trading potential or like that person gain one before you get the kill on them.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the adjustments are with Jet as moving forwards with some of the changes. I'm glad that they didn't actually change the dash for the reasons you're talking about.
Yeah, I agree. They did that fault line again. I'm gonna have to use that fault line because it's actually really sick. Yeah, so their breach is just like flashing for her the entire way up short. So she dashes up. I think he flashes through the left side of the TP and then he flashes through U-Haul. So they just close that distance super fast. And here's that they have the same setup basically as pistol round where there's playing 3 from U-Haul except Brim's pocket this time. So they're giving up control everywhere else. And then their Sova's just gonna be on a super late flank again.
Molly is really annoying. That actually buys specifically just enough time for Sova to flank showers. And obviously that's pretty enormous because that pressure, that presence now, the threat is greater than the action. Creates a lot of problems that takes one player out of this retake. And Zest also has position
Yes.
for the ultimate as well for the Hunter's Fury. So it's just really perfect. Just so much forethought into that. That's great.
Yeah, as soon as he got that kill to get his ult, he immediately fell from showers and started playing post plant with his ult rather than trying to get like another kill or two or helping his team from showers. So that was really smart. Yeah, like there's just little things like that fault line that goes hookah and I imagine to be long as well that I just don't see or I'm not like shocked when I see utility usage like that when I watch like EU or NA games as much. So I think that's one thing because I know right now since this round it doesn't look like there's anything interesting happening right away, but a lot of these teams are like, oh, our region's better, but they're missing the point that um in each region is doing something well more than the other regions, and that's what you should be trying to take note of. And it doesn't even matter like if you steal it or copy it and change it, at least then you're improving that part of your game, because I don't think there's any region that like is consistently good in every area of the game from what I've seen. Each like region has like little styles or things that they're good at compared to others.
Yeah, for sure. And the B splits with a A stack from Jupiter. So
Yeah, this is just an eco for them, so I don't think there'd
RIP.
be much from it.
Their jet likes getting on top of stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting how they use their jets as well. Like the APC thing, they're so fixated on that being part of their game plan. And maybe it's just something that worked really well for them when Jupiter started their dominant run, I guess. Yeah, someone in chat also mentioned that Asia really doesn't like using Killjoy at all.
Right. It doesn't surprise me too much. This is just the thing with Valorant is that Valorant is just about well, what every well balanced game should be about is the idea of opportunity cost. And when you have agents, like this or classes, or so many classes, and the freedom to pick between all of them, then it's just all about the game is about opportunity cost. So really plays massively into what you're talking about in terms of focusing on certain philosophies and styles of play. And it totally makes sense to me that they wouldn't want to use Killjoy because there's give and take with everything.
I think at the start, so I'll enlarge the main map. So they ping the left side here, so I'm wondering if the Jet's just gonna dash out wide and then they're gonna swing off of that contact. Be interesting to see. Because they're trying to contest this long as well. It's really confusing too to tell which team is actually
Doing the ping,
pinging, yeah.
I had to color them. Yeah, I was just thinking that too because we got the ping on the container on B side, and I'm thinking to myself, what is the purpose of that ping? Could it be that's where the server arrow is going to land about now, or what's the deal?
Yeah, I'll be interested to see it. More observer updates in the next month or so as they come out.
So one thing to know about that Jet dash as well, I actually liked it a lot, even though Jet died, because if you think about the angle that the defenders will have to hold from elbow, they're going to take the position which allows them to fall back, which is the corner. So by dashing to that spot, it's not if there is somebody that can swing and trade with Jet, if they are to kind of swing wide enough to kill the Jet, then they'll get traded on elbow. So that's kind of the purpose of that dash. It's actually a good dash, even though it didn't work out, and it didn't work out. I think just because of the coordination wasn't the spacing wasn't correct on the attack. But the idea is very very good.
Yeah, I'm curious if we'll see an NA more, because obviously a lot of NA teams before on attacking side, their Jet wasn't the first one in the sites. They weren't dashing in, they were more just trying to get openings with ops, but now obviously the op has changed. We'll talk about that more on Saturday, but I wonder if more NA teams are kind of going to adopt like EU and these Asia teams do, where the Jet's the first one in, but they're buying you more space to get into the site.
Yeah, totally agree. I feel like Mixwell's been really good at that in Europe. Like it always felt to me like Mixwell really understood the value of all of that with Jet and the dashes. And actually, he always felt like one of the reasons why they were so good on Split. I felt like he always had very good dashes to open up the sites and throwing forward smokes to dash into his own smokes and just stuff to create like a huge disruption and pressure to create space for his team. I
Yeah,
believe now this just switches and Jupiter just win like 6 in a row or something,
yeah,
and
I'm
then
pretty
Vision
sure.
Strikers win one at the end. So we get Showers control.
It looks like they're
So
like really worried about a push from long or like someone pushing short as well, because they're holding super passive in both of those areas while they work showers.
yeah, it's usually a pretty good indication that they're going to hit the A site, and you can see that the read is really easy as well. It seems from Jupiter, they seem to just read this completely, in that the only thing they've seen is Shower's presence, so they're just assuming that it's going to be an A hit.
Yeah, and their rain has just been posted on long this entire time, and their Cypher has a cam backside to look in Hookah, so they have that covered. Yeah, here's the Jet just buying like so much space for everyone with the dash out through the backside smoke and then updrafting into heaven. I feel like this is where both teams have really struggled. Like they do really well to get onto the site, but as soon as they get onto the site, that's where they actually like struggle. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, what do we need to be doing now? Where do we need to be positioned? Which fight should we be taking?
yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I want to rewind as well because I was interested to see. I didn't get to see when camera was switching where those smokes actually went. Okay, that's cool. So we can kind of freeze it here and you can see what they're doing. So they smoked off the entire left side and they just want to isolate this entire back right corner. So when the jet dashes out, then they flash through triple and then they can swing on this guy in cubby. That's really sick.
Yeah, this is really really cool. And getting up into the heaven smoke, obviously, it feels like a natural extension. You kind of you do need to have something more because when those smokes go away, you're you can't guarantee you're going to win that U-Haul position, given that the opening utility that you've used is to guarantee backside control. So you kind of need Jet to succeed towards heaven there. So that's I think one of the unfortunate parts of this particular round is that because it was so telegraphed, the other team had the rotation already there. And so there's not this possibility really that Jet's not going to have a fight immediately as she updrafts. And it's going to be very telegraphed because you, of course, hear the updraft and there's a smoke. So the defender has a very big advantage. But other than that, like it's interesting because as you say, like these ideas are very, very good. It's just some of the fundamentals that are also missing. I think that's kind of what it comes down to, and where some of the CS experience actually helps a lot. About is what are the protocols once we've opened up the site and having the ability to quickly intuitively understand who needs to do what and how it needs to go with regards to angles and maybe if taking some more offensive ground.
Yeah, I think Sideshow mentioned this as well. Like these Asian teams seem to have like really good structured openings, but the teams they're playing against aren't necessarily getting aggressive defensively or trying to default and stall them out in certain areas, which I definitely agree with. If they went up against like an NA or EU team, they're not just gonna let you get some um, drastic map control and set up an opening for yourself like 20 seconds into the round.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one too. I mean, that's something also that we've seen some of the North American teams struggling with too. We noted that at Pot Flash with Cloud9, I think in particular as the example, just a team that played extremely well but just missed certain aggressive components to their play that just put them in spots where they were unable to really succeed, just always playing from behind and allowing the other team to just run their game plan. And that's at the most elite level, it's got to be a mixture between you having your own game plan and you also within your game plan disrupting what the other team is doing as consistently as you can, and then having enough ability within your structure to be reactive and have every player on the same page as to what that looks like. Because you can never have a specific plan for every single round because they're all around, there's just too many variables. So you have to be able to have a capacity to be loose enough and flexible enough, and your players be smart enough to know what the protocols are. And that's that balance to play the most elite level is very difficult because especially when you're studying everybody, the teams that are very easy to predict will get, even if they're playing the fundamentals very well, that they're going to struggle.
Yeah, and I think part of it as well, Denobi made a good highlight of this where teams, when they try stuff for the very first time against you and use it against you, it's gonna work really well because that third round that we discussed or we talked about in the second half where the Vision Strikers push through short and collapse on showers, obviously that's something that Jupiter is not really at fault for, right? There's no way you could just react to that and make that a super good position from yourself when they have that good of a setup. And you obviously can't be in the position afterwards where it's like, we're super scared of them doing that every round now, so we're just going to give them that area. That's obviously not feasible either. So you have to have a good balance, like you said, of knowing um, stuff that they can do and knowing sometimes when it's like, okay, we can't really do anything about that in that round. We just got massively outplayed. We can think of ways to counter it if they do it another round. Otherwise, we still have to like stick to our game plan in general instead of caving into theirs.
Yeah, and who do we have on? Oh, Shazam, yeah. Shazam was talking about this too. Just how important it is in Valorant, especially to have this flexibility, and that your team, your players need to know what to. They just need to know how to react to situations. If you play too structured, you'll actually have a lot of issues in that. In that you'll be too rigid. That everyone, it's gonna be very difficult to get all of your players on the same page to react to stuff. You cannot allow your entire team to just play that way. They've got to learn the game in a more flexible manner. And I felt like that was a very important element that Shazam talked about because he highlighted as the extreme of this T1 at the height of their struggles was very much suffering from this. And there's a lot of Counter Strike modes of thought that do rely heavily on over structuring a team, and that's a huge problem.
That was a really good retake. Long from Jupiter. The Reina just dry peeked the first guy, but after that, then the Breach had that flash that we seen a few times where they flash through that top side of Long. It just blinds everyone there.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the usage of Breach quite a lot. Again, like he is pretty OP right now, so I hope that that gets addressed. So of course, it's teams will be using him a lot, but at least we're seeing better, not just like a flash abuse. We're seeing good fault lines. We're seeing like a good understanding of what he brings to the table as a complete package.
Yeah, I think the people are gonna keep talking about the flashes, but I think the fault line and the aftershock are still um
Top
sometimes I
tier.
think yeah, they're still like super sick, especially since the fault line with the changes for the op as well now, especially with the op being slower. I just feel like it's so easy to deny any opening someone has set up because there's just nothing you can really counter it. It's not like a smoke where someone smokes off where you want to set up an opening somewhere. You're like, okay, we can flash through it or contact through it. It's like, okay, I have to respect this fault line for the next 3 seconds, which lets them get position.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's interesting because if you think about like what Sage's slow orb does, it's kind of like being able to throw like two or three of those on multiple positions if you find the right lineups at the beginning of a round. Although the fault line doesn't last as long, it still creates enough of a disruption and a timing issue. It's an aggressive cubby play with an operator. It's pretty standard stuff. Can abuse the dash.
Yeah, they got these Asian teams on defense get really aggressive everywhere. Like they walk down long with Rain on the op and they cam there, and then the Jet's just holding in Cubby as well with an op. Oh,
Having the shorty there as well is pretty fantastic. Being able to like punish people who try to abuse your position by having the perfect weapon for that for the U-Haul position. That's actually really sick.
yeah, it'll be interesting as well because one, I don't even know if you're going to be able to double op going forward, just economy wise. And then two, if you're going to be willing to walk all the way down long B and try to post up there as well. I just feel like with the update, so many game plans like that are going to have to be altered.
This is the timing might work out here. We're almost at the end of this match.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're just doing their aggressive long setup again. Yeah, they just walk down like every time. I didn't see if their breach flashed for them, but it looked like they just contacted down and they get the cam set up again. I think this is consistently the most aggressive I've seen Cyphers play from any region though in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. It's a very interesting thing to know because I'm not hating it. I think it definitely makes a lot of sense. It just depends on how all the other pieces move around it.
And just look at the stack already off of that because they can watch towards Hookah with his cam and Reyna's posted up there and they're just ready for the stack.
And the cam also allows the Reina to understand whether she can safely push and take angles. Big breach holds going both ways. Really interesting how the breach ults kind of both went different paths there, allowing either team to go beyond the like well follow the path of them. But unfortunately, Vision Strikers got absolutely stuck here in showers because it was a mostly showers push, and they would have got wrecked if they went up short because of the breach ult there as well. So I think that just really goes to show that given the stack that was possible due to the info on B, as you mentioned, there's just like nothing that was possible in this round unless they would have challenged the control, the aggressive info control on the B side of the map. That was the only answer in this round to prevent that from happening.
I think that's something you have to figure out ways of doing as well, because against these better teams, you can't, when they get map control against you, you can't just respect that always. You're going to have times where you're going to have to contest it. Otherwise, like they just took it 2 rounds in a row and stacked for it times in a row, and you can't just reliably let that happen. So let's say they
Yep.
have their jet post up in the cubby again. Doesn't look like the Reyna. Oh wow, they're just walking all the way up long. They're not scared at all. But their Sova's playing close. Let's see if he can enter this. They got the cam again. Wow, they did 3 times in a row basically.
And why not if it's not getting punished? And
Yeah,
also seeing the Sova there as well might be a tell for them as a because you know typically it's if you catch the cipher on the extremity, that's the position that's the lurk spot typically. So catching this over there, usually you might actually assume that the push is coming towards B, but they actually rotate off towards A and stack A instead.
it would have been interesting to see if Vision Strikers even just put like, you don't even have to use a cipher cam to see if their Reyna's pushing up like that, or if they're pushing down, maybe just like a recon dart, a drone, and then have like one other person there just to push them off that angle, rather than them just gain full control of it every time.
It's really interesting too. I like the dynamic on with Reyna because of the layers that she's able to throw out. If you're taking the angle away from her, it allows her to make you second guess or maybe invest more utility because she could be back on that angle again. Because either she peeks at the Lear or you get blinded, so you kind of have to respect it. So soloing the site with Reyna with the operator there actually makes a lot of sense to me. It's a really cool setup actually, the way that they've been playing around B. But as you say, you know, you got to have sort of pre-decided ways to deal with certain things like this. Like teams might do it differently, but having an understanding as to how to challenge certain portions of map control that the defenders may take is an important thing to throw into your repertoire as a team.
Yeah, it looks like this time as well they're gonna go for like aggressive showers, and they're just gonna let the Reyna just keep working long by herself. They might honestly just leave like her here at some point and just have the Cypher watching. They have total showers control, they have double shower set up.
And given how active Jupiter has been on the defense, that's almost a thing. That's almost a telegraphed. Like the fact that they have nothing towards B is almost telegraphed in of itself at this point that they may be doing something towards A. So there's a lot of space to be gained, and exploding onto the site is looking very successful because of that fact. So this is one of those rounds which kind of almost feels like a gamble in the sense of how you know the levels of success because they were just contacting us
Yeah.
and maybe they were trying to punish possible info plays as they've been seeing, but they got lucky this time because their opponents were actually pressuring towards showers instead.
obviously where they're leaning in one area or something like that. I just realized my mic was mute for stream that entire time, so that was great. But I was just talking about, I really like the Cypher Trip conversation because it is really easy to read it, depending on what area you're in, especially on a map like Split. Because a lot of teams are using, we've identified like when they trip ropes all the time. Obviously, a lot of teams aren't wanting to play ropes, but when we covered G2 versus FPX, that trip is kind of like a band-aid covering your mid issue because you don't really have good ways to contest mid. And it's really hard to contest mid in general, but you need to like figure out ways to control heaven or get aggressive on other parts of the map so you aren't relying on, okay, we hope they don't abuse this trip in mid this round. Because once they figure out that trip's there reliably, they can kind of read into what you're doing.
Yeah, lots of tells, and especially with like watching demos and so on. I feel like it's one of the things that's the easiest to kind of begin to study. Or if you're trying to be an analyst and provide information and how to beat a team, that's like one of the first things I would think to look at as well is like not just where are the trips going, but how does their cipher play off of the trips, and what are other tells in the rounds that may also be linked to how the cipher is playing, like based off what other agents might be doing with their utility, stuff like that. There's definitely like a link between in obviously teams who are playing the game correctly. There's going to be links between how agents use utility and how defensive or aggressive a team might be, and how quickly or slowly they may be doing whatever they want to be doing. So yeah, there's so much insight to be gathered from every single little detail at the very top level. So yeah, it's super interesting. It makes it very difficult in that sense to, or very time consuming in that sense to really study. I feel like the demos of teams.
Yeah, there's just like so many little things to notice every round all the time, especially because I felt like this game we were able to watch every single round basically, even though like when we went back to the first half we weren't covering everything, but just there was sometimes so much stuff happening in a matter of like 3 seconds on like those A site hits that you really have to go back and watch it like 5 or so times to fully understand the whole picture. Or like that set piece play, when Vision Strikers were pushing short as defenders to get control outside showers. If you really want to understand like all the work they put into that, you're gonna have to study it like a few times to fully understand that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And with that said, unless there's any more points you have to make, it's time to close the show. I think it's about
Yeah.
that time.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks guys for watching our first dive into Asian Valorant, and it was really interesting. I think there was a lot of cool takeaways from this particular analysis, and I'm curious if we'll get any other good, or any other demos in the future that will be also particularly interesting to check out. We'll probably we usually figure it out a few days before we do the VOD review. So if you guys have any suggestions as to demos you think that would be really awesome to hear us talk about, please throw them at us on Twitter or Discord. And if you're not already in the Discord, what are you doing with your life? The VOD will go up on YouTube tomorrow morning, as always. The VODs are always released the day after the show on our YouTube, so be following and subscribing that channel if you're not already as well. And we'll be live on Saturday at the usual time, 10 a.m. Pacific, with our next episode of Immortal Minds. And our special guest is yet to be announced, but it's a good one. And we will be talking a lot about the patch because it was such a hefty patch, so many things to discuss. And also, we have an amazing guest, so there'll be we will not. Honestly, we should probably think about extending the show because there's gonna be so much stuff to talk about. So you definitely don't want to miss it. Make sure you tune in for that. And oh well, actually, is it Spoos? Is asking us a question. What do you wanna take that one, Mike?
Sure. On Brim versus Omen on Bind.
Space.
I mean, Angel's probably the only person in the entire world that runs Brimstone on Bind besides Switch to Vision Strikers. So I think the upside of Brim, obviously on Bind, it's like there's very easy ways to use his ult, like U-Haul is super common. If you're attacking the B site, you could just ult all of elbow, or you could ult the entire site. I prefer ulting all of site. The biggest thing that's always going to come down to why people choose Omen over Brim and Viper, I think is just position wise, because Viper and Brim, you have to be positionally like very exact with where you're set up to make sure you can utilize their utility. Um, but with Omen, right, you can just do a smokes anywhere. If you're caught out in a bad position, you can just TP, which a lot of top people that play Omen, I don't feel like use that ability very well. And then obviously he has a flash that's very large as well with the hitbox. So that's an easy thing for people to use. Whereas with Brim, you need to be learning like molly lineups, and those can be extremely tedious to find as well. So I think that's part of the, like, those are two major pieces of it, that Omen doesn't really depend as much positionally, and then people like his util kit because of flash, and it's also less lineup oriented.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. And with that, I feel like we should close the show. If you have any questions, hit us up on Twitter or just add us on the Discord, and we'll write up some answers. But this is the end of the analysis show today, and I think I've said everything in the sort of previous close there. So thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you on Saturday for the next show. Cheers.